40,000 years ago, a family lies awake in the dark, not because of a lion outside the camp, not because of the cold. They're awake because of something smaller than their smallest fingernail, something that doesn't roar, doesn't leave tracks, and can kill a child in 3 days without ever being seen clearly in the firelight. You've heard the story of early humans fighting off saber-toothed cats and cave bears. That story gets told a lot because it's dramatic and it's visible. Here's the story that almost never gets told. For a huge stretch of human history, the deadliest predator our ancestors faced wasn't the animal with claws. It was the one that arrived every single night in total silence and fed on them while they slept. Picture it, a river valley, somewhere in early human Africa, 60, 80,000 years ago. It's the season the water slows down and pools in the low ground, warm, still, thick with insects. The band has maybe 20, 30 people. They chose this spot for good reasons: water, game trail, shade. What they didn't know, what nobody would know for tens of thousands of years, is that still water is a nursery. Every pool near their camp is quietly producing thousands of new mosquitoes a week. Night falls, and this is when it starts. Not one insect, a haze of them, rising off the water the moment the air cools. There's no repellent, no screen door, no walls at all, just skin and darkness and a whining sound that doesn't stop. Children cry. Adults slap at their own arms in the dark, half asleep, losing sleep they can't afford to lose before a hunt. And somewhere in that biting, invisibly, some of them are being infected with something far worse than an itch, a parasite that won't show symptoms for days, that will announce itself later as a fever that comes in waves, chills that won't stop, a body that shakes itself weak. They have no word for malaria. They just know, near the water, in the warm season, people get sick, and some of them don't get better. Here's what makes this genuinely unsettling. Mosquitoes and the diseases they carry are old, older than modern humans. Malaria-like parasites have existed for tens of millions of years. They were almost certainly biting and infecting our ancestors long before Homo sapiens existed at all. This wasn't a new threat humans encountered on their journey out of Africa. It was a threat baked into the environment humans evolved inside of from the very beginning, which means early humans didn't get to slowly discover this enemy. They were born into a world where it was already there, already killing, already shaping who lived long enough to have children of their own, and it left fingerprints. Scientists studying human DNA today have found something remarkable: several genetic traits that protect against severe malaria, including the trait behind sickle-shaped blood cells, appear to have arisen and spread specifically in populations that live for tens of thousands of years in high mosquito regions. That's not folklore. That's written into human genes right now, in people alive today, as a direct evolutionary scar from this exact war. Bodies changed over hundreds of generations because the insect that hunted at night was that relentless. Early humans didn't have that science. What they had was pattern recognition, passed down the only way information moved back then, spoken, remembered, repeated by elders who'd buried enough people to know something was true even without knowing why. So what did they actually do? No nets yet, not for tens of thousands of years. No smoke science, just instinct and trial and error paid for in lives. Fire was almost certainly the first weapon and one of the only ones that worked. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer groups, people living today in ways that echo ancient life, have observed something telling. Fires are deliberately kept smoky, not just for warmth or cooking, specifically because the smoke keeps biting insects away through the worst hours of the night. It's very likely early humans discovered this the same way, not through understanding, but by noticing that the family sleeping closest to the smokiest fire had fewer bites, fewer fevers, fewer deaths. That knowledge, once found, would have been treated as sacred. Keep the fire smoking. Sleep close to the smoke. It might have been one of the first pieces of practical medicine humans ever passed down. Location mattered just as much. Bands that lingered too long next to slow, warm, stagnant water paid for in sickness. Bands that moved, that treated a good hunting spot as temporary, that kept shifting camp with the seasons, likely suffered less, though they wouldn't have understood exactly why. Some researchers studying ancient settlement patterns believe this may be part of why early humans stayed so mobile for so long, rather than settling permanently near the richest water sources. The richest water was often also the deadliest. And there's a harder truth underneath all of this. Children paid the highest price. In regions with heavy mosquito-borne disease today, young children are still the most vulnerable. Their immune systems haven't yet built any resistance. There's no reason to think it was different 60,000 years ago. Every band, in every generation, likely lost children to a fever that arrived with no warning, out of the dark, days after a single bite nobody remembered. That's the quiet horror underneath this STO. Here's the part that should genuinely change how you think about human history. We tell the story of early humans conquering the world, walking out of Africa, crossing continents, surviving ice ages, outlasting predators 10 times their size. That story is true, but it leaves out an enemy that may have shaped where that journey went. Some regions of the ancient world, thick, swampy, mosquito-heavy, appear to have been avoided or thinly populated for tens of thousands of years, far longer than the terrain or climate alone would explain. Researchers studying disease and ancient human geography have proposed that heavy, relentless insect-borne disease may have quietly kept certain fertile, resource-rich regions nearly empty of humans for an extraordinarily long time. Not because people couldn't survive there occasionally, but because nobody could survive there for generations without being worn down by fever after fever. In other words, this insect may have helped draw the map of where humanity spread first and where it didn't. Not mountains, not oceans, something you could hold between two fingers and crush without even feeling it. Here's the line that should sit with you. 60,000 years later, with satellites and vaccines and cities of steel, mosquitoes still kill roughly 600,000 people a year. Most of them children, in the exact same category of low, warm, still water regions that were dangerous to a prehistoric family sleeping by a river. We've built spacecraft. We've mapped the human genome, including the very genes this insect forced our ancestors to evolve. And we still haven't fully won this war. The family in that river valley 60,000 years ago had fire and smoke and instinct and nothing else. We have everything else. And the enemy is still here, mostly unchanged, still arriving in silence, still finding the youngest and the weakest first. Every human alive today is descended from someone who survived that first war, someone who slept close enough to the smoke, someone whose blood, by pure chance, resisted the fever just a little better than their neighbors. You don't remember that war. No one wrote it down. There were no names, no monuments, no myths passed down about the insect that hunted in the dark. But it's still in you, in the genes some of us carry, in the instinct that still makes you want to screen on the window and net over the bed before you can fall asleep at night. Some wars don't end. They just get quiet enough that you forget you're still in one.